trying some new streaming software to multiple social media platforms, more than I've done previously. So it's an experiment. If you're having issues, bear with us and know that we will figure out the kinks if there are any. But I'm excited to share with you today. It's Wednesday, August 6th, 3 o'clock. And man, oh man, Donald Trump is being as awful as ever. He's really trying hard to distract everyone from the Epstein files, which is continuing to erode a lot of his core base that wanted him to eradicate the deep state and get rid of all the pedophiles and traffickers that were supposedly in the Democratic Party. But now a lot of people are realizing, wow, Trump's in the White House and they are the deep state and they are not being honest and they're not sharing information that exists and they're trying to pull a fast one on people. And Trump, I think, made a big mistake saying that people were stupid by not just dropping the Epstein thing, when in fact he was his best friend for years and years and years. I must admit, I listened to Michael Wolff every single message that he's been sending. He's written 4 books on Trump, of which I've read. And he spent hours and hours, over 100 hours, with Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein even showed him some photos of Trump with naked, topless underage girls and a wet stain, supposedly, on his pant leg. Anyway, I want to start by talking about the virus. And it's a concept I've been using for years, that I felt like my mind got hacked by a mind control virus. And I use the analogy of malware. You getting deceived into clicking on malware and it taking over your operating system of your computer, and how the real Steve got hacked by the Mooney indoctrination process, where I had a new identity and such. And today, this week's podcast and Substack was with an amazing social psychologist at the University of Cambridge, Sander Vanderlinden, who wrote a new book called Foolproof. And he uses the virus analogy. And he says, because we're in an age of information warfare, what's happening is best understood as a virus. And he's been working on, guess what? Inoculation, or a version of psychological vaccine. And so the book is fascinating. And he has a game called getbadnews.com, where he teaches people the techniques of conspiracy theories and how to identify the most common DNA of these viruses, these mind control viruses that get people disconnected from the real world and into la la land. And I really, really want to. I see we're getting a test message. Yep, I'm seeing it. Very excited about doing the stream today. And so check out my Substack, check out my podcast, which is on the Midas Touch Network, Apple, Spotify, and about 12 or 14 other platforms. Next week is a really important one for activists. I interview a Hispanic specialist who basically, when I spoke with her, talked about how much the Democrats mismessage to the Hispanic community. Because for those who are following, the voting from the last election, a lot of Hispanics flipped from Democratic to you know who. And it's because there was really bad wording, bad associations, and not understanding, connecting the dots. And, so this is a big one next Monday. Check it out. And I'm very excited because we have a Spanish translation of Combating Cult Mind Control about to launch any moment in the next few days, and hopefully by Monday. Because there's a lot of Spanish speaking folks who minds have been hacked, many into New Apostolic Reformation churches with that which are cults. And so the more they can understand, the whole issue of mind control and cults, the better off. Unfortunately, there's no Spanish edition of Simon and Schuster's The Cult of Trump, but I'm still recommending for those people who still haven't read it or listened to me read it for Simon and Schuster to do that. And I'm seeing people messaging me. Thank you for all the work. Hold on. Thank you so much, Siska. And what do you attribute La La Lander's recent concern with releasing JE files? I'm sorry, that just newly qualified and the fearless leader. I'm not sure who La La Lander is. I don't know, maybe because I'm tired. But all I can say is we want to keep the messaging not just to the people who already know that Trump is awful and is trying to put a fascist authoritarian state in place, but we want a message to people who are GOPs and people who are former Trump supporters. And I've been encouraging folks to just reach out, say hi, been thinking of you, miss you. What do you think of what's going on? Just very gentle, open ended, and letting people know that you still care about them and want them in your life. Um, and people are saying hola, it's great. So, yeah, there's just so much going on. A lot of tariff stuff, and Trump fired the person in charge of labor statistics. So the question is, how will we actually know what's going on with the economy? How will Wall Street handle not having actual facts to go off of? It's very hard for me to understand how anyone in Wall Street can invest not knowing what the economy is actually doing and just wanting to listen to Trump. And it's very interesting that Trump has one of his people over trying to talk to Putin right now and make nice, because the word I have is Putin is pissed off at Trump, and the Teal, Musk, Zuckerberg contingent are trying to basically wean people off of Donald Trump so they can stick J.D. Vance in. In fact, there's an effort now to try to federalize Washington, D.C., which always was asking to be a state. Now they want to have their own Freedom City. And I don't know if you've heard of that notion of Freedom City, but it's the new world order that the tech bros would really like to impose on us, where we no longer have a country and we no longer have states that are in relationship to each other and rule of law, but rather they are in charge. And I just really want to emphasize how sophisticated AI is getting in terms of manipulating masses of people based on their personal data and profiles, and how important it is, if you're listening to me, to spend time in real life with real people and not think that being on your phone is actually reality and true. See, Niraj said, I just listened to a podcast on AI. The data centers are being done in Global South. Do they have water and power resources? Yeah, so this is another issue that really pisses me off, and I'm sure you too, because the EPA has been, destroyed. All of the checks and balances to rein in the fossil fuel industry, all of their lobbying paid off to get Trump to do what they want. But and these AI data centers need more electricity, so they're cranking out higher and higher amounts of CO2, is my understanding, from their data centers. And we have to start thinking about planetary survival, I believe, going forward. Um, Yeah, I want to mention I have a Substack. We're really asking people to come on, not just with the free level, but to subscribe. I know a lot of my peers on Substack spend a lot of time cultivating community and thanking people and begging people for money all the time. I just do a live stream every once in a while and I say, "Hey, if you like what I'm doing, because as far as I know, I'm the only cult expert, certainly an ex-Mooney and mental health professional with 49 years of experience who wrote The Cult of Trump, whose messaging and has a plan, if anyone wants to listen to it, for how we're going to stabilize citizenry to stop this movement to authoritarianism. And so we need to educate ourselves, and then we need to educate our family and our friends, and then work outward to our community. Oh, and I'll mention that on the 16th, a week from tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a live stream and a talk in person um, for defending democracy, and that will be live streamed as well. And but you can register through mobilize.us. And let's see, Julie on Substack asks, is JD going to be obedient to Putin Teal? Absolutely. Musk too. And remember, Putin and Xi, while they're rivals, they also have an alliance against their common enemy, which is the United States and the EU and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. So, but I really wonder whether the real base of the cult of Trump will feel anything towards JD Vance in terms of when he messages. But I predict he will be a good lapdog and say exactly what the speechwriters write for him. Will not do Trump's going off into um, demented lapses. But the tariffs are upending things, and all I can say is I want planetary survival, and I believe in love, and I believe in truth, and there is no such thing as alternate facts. Whoever says they're alternate facts is making it up. That's called misinformation or disinformation. For those who don't know the difference between disinformation and misinformation, is disinformation is intentional lying, where you knowingly are lying, and misinformation is where you're saying something that's not true, but it's by accident or you just didn't know any better. So that's a big difference. All I can say is they're studying people's brains who are using ChatGPT and other AI, and the brain is shrinking. And this is a real danger for the human species if we stop thinking for ourselves and reading books and analyzing things from different perspectives and just defer to whatever the AI tells us to think and feel and do and stay within the feed that AI is giving us. Um, our brain's going to shrink and we'll be less and less human and we'll be moving towards that hope of Musk to go to Mars, and we'll be androids and put our consciousness into chips. No, thank you. I like humans. I like to dance and listen to creative music and be with people, look them in the eyes, and not just be online. I mean, I'm grateful at the moment that I can reach people on so many platforms using media, but it's not the same thing. And as a therapist, when I'm with people in person, I can just feel them and get so much more impact than I can over Zoom. Even though I do a lot of Zoom consults for folks around the world who ask me for advice for recovery or for how to help a loved one. Let's see. Do we have a way of addressing people's hopelessness and helplessness that causes them to turn to fantastical solutions? So the hopelessness, I think, has been driven a lot by the overwhelming messaging of AI intentionally. Because if you want to brainwash people, you want to overload them. You want to what's called unfreeze their identity, often through overload, confusion. And when people are that confused, they will basically reduce their developmental stance to more childlike, wanting mommy or daddy to tell them what to do, how to think, etc. And I'm for being an adult and having a locus of control for my decisions inside of me. Although I often ask my assistant Jim, what would you recommend, buddy? You're more technical than me, or you're more of a business person than me, and I will often take his advice. Sometimes I disagree, but anyway, I'm digressing for a minute. I'm just being a little bit having a little levity because I want people to understand that I'm not perfect and I'm struggling too. And the best cure is activism and feeling like you're part of a solution, even if it's a long term solution, that every day you're making a contribution, that you matter, whether you're helping one person or reaching out. Some people have 1 million followers. And I want to help teach people how to be more effective communicating to folks who have been radicalized or who buy into conspiracy beliefs. I really want you to check out getbadnews.com, Sander Vanderlinden's landmark research that demonstrates that it actually helps people understand the techniques that are being used on them online. And once we understand them, then we can teach our children, we can teach other members of our family, and we can get what's called herd immunity, which would be really awesome. Let's see. Nicole L on Substack asks if Maxwell's testimony, what becomes of Blanche meeting with her, does not connect Trump and Epstein. Do you believe MAGA will believe it? So I do not believe for a second that Maxwell can be trusted to be honest. I think the purpose of sending his personal lawyer, the number 2 man of the Justice Department, to meet with Maxwell was to size out and make a proposal that she will not reinforce all the facts about Epstein's relationship and Trump with underage trafficked girls. So, is the a deal in the mix? I believe so. Do you think that I would believe a transcript of what was said between Blanche and Maxwell? Not for a minute. And I really want people to understand that pathological liars are think they're above the law. And and Donald Trump was raised in a cult of Norman Vincent Peale, who said fake it till you make it. And the whole notion is just believe 100% and it will magically manifest. And there is no magical manifestation. It's magical thinking. And I think Trump's going down. I really do. I think, unfortunately, Vance is going to take over so Thiel can federalize Washington D.C. and Musk and Zuckerberg can push no regulations on their AI dreams. I know Zuckerberg really wants everyone to go virtual reality even. And I got to be honest, one of my friends and colleagues, David Lane, who I've interviewed twice, bought me a gift of an Oculus VR, and I've never used it, and I'm still afraid to even put it on my head because I don't want the internet to know what my brain is doing. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, I never did my 23andMe DNA because I didn't want like the Chinese to get it because they're often taking DNA of their citizens to control them. And guess what? 23andMe went bankrupt. And if anyone's listening and you did 23andMe, go on and delete your data ASAP unless you want it sold and have people harming you. Okay. Holly Sita. Hi, Dr. Hassan. Saw you on a documentary about cults last night. You were less silver, but just as earnest. I don't know which documentary that was, but I can tell you I've been doing documentary interviews for 49 years. And so there's a whole bunch of things that are surfacing every once in a while, and I don't even remember doing them. Yeah, if you look at my older pictures, and my team has photos of me when I looked like John Lennon, I had like a Beatles cut and black hair and black eyebrows, etc. It's kind of funny, actually. But by the way, did anyone see the Titan Ocean Gate, a Netflix documentary about the submersible that was on going to the Titanic and blew up? It was a cult. It was a corporate cult. I did that video. It's everywhere. And if you haven't downloaded my influence continuum free on freedomofmind.com, study it. Ethical, ethical influence, healthy cults, healthy groups, healthy religions, mind control, authoritarian cults based on my bite model: behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Which reminds me, dun, 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 dun. So, for those of my regulars, I know that I did my doctoral dissertation to update the law based on trafficking. And so we did the quantitative study on my bite model of authoritarian control. And now we have two new versions, a 20 question one and a 40 question one. The wording's a little different, but we're testing it out. It's free, it's anonymous. And even if you've filled out previous surveys, we added a text box for feedback, because we really want to come up with something objective that the law will accept as evaluating undue influence. And so go to bitemodel.com. And we've also added informed consent documents, and we've also asked people who want to be identified. You can it'll give you a number on the influence continuum of how authoritarian, whatever the group is, and your involvement. And if you want to, get your number and then contact us, you can email us and we will start a database. Because I would love to have 500 to 1,000 ex-members of Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, for example, Scientology, Moonies, all of the major cults, New Apostolic Reformation, Opus Dei, so that we have statistically valid measurements to say this group is an authoritarian mind control cult. So that's very exciting. I'm thrilled. And what I'd also like to explain, what I learned, is that my bite model, while I created it in 1985 and has helped hundreds of thousands of people exit mind control cults, the criteria overlap with each other, which I've always explained. Behavior control influences thought control. It influences emotion control. And when you're doing quantitative research, they want very clean variables that don't influence each other. So that's part of the reasoning of that. Now, I saw a Nancy Wallace thing come up on the screen. Nancy's a regular. I thank you, Nancy. Uh, okay, great. So, Nancy, you're a great super chat donator. Thank you for the $5. And I appreciate you tuning in every week when I'm live streaming. And Nancy says, I'm often compelled to correct dangerous, egregious disinformation on social media, so it's not the only narrative in people's faces. Is that helpful, or are we too siloed for it to matter? Great question. The one thing I really want to say to people is you don't want to amplify disinformation. And I see too many people taking disinformation and then commenting, saying how stupid it is or whatever. Just say the truth. Say what the fact is about what this information was. That's really, really important. And I really want to encourage people to message to Trump believers or GOP folks or people who are undecided. The folks who are activists, we already know that it's bad and we want to do everything we can to stop it. And so we need more numbers of people and we need more activists. And if you haven't seen the video of the town hall with the Republican, where everyone was angry and upset, and a woman, criticized, saying all this money is going for ICE, and what about helping people? People were applauding. That's what we want all over the country. And right now in Texas, they're trying to gerrymander, avoiding the census. Gerrymandering has been going on for a long time with the Democrats and the Republicans, but it's always been based on the census. And now Trump just says we need Texas. We don't want to lose the House, so we're going to change it. And the Democrats walked out, so they couldn't even vote on it. So much cheating is happening. Um, yeah, and if you want to analyze your media consumption, we use Ground News. In fact, I don't know, Jim, if you're listening, but Ground News said, "Hey, we like your work. Do you want to sponsor us? Or we can sponsor you rather, Steve." And I'm like, "Oh, let's do this, Jim." So I don't know if he had time to follow up. We're understaffed and under resourced, but everybody on my team are golden. We're all just pushing as hard as we can to help as many people as we can. Let's see, Niraj. Tom Cruise went on a talk show and said he fired a stunt coordinator that didn't do the stunt when he hangs off the side of the plane in flight, so he hired another stunt coordinator. Reckless. Um, well, I don't see Tom Cruise movies in the theater because I don't want to encourage Scientology and I don't want to encourage him as one of the biggest name recruiters for one of the most notorious cults of all time of Hubbard, former science fiction writer and occultist. And for those who don't know me well, I'm one of my closest friends is John Atack, Atack, who has a YouTube channel, John Atack and Friends, and he wrote the definitive biography of Hubbard that other people, Lawrence Wright and Janet Reitman, took his stuff, but he is the world authority on Scientology. And Hubbard was a hypnotist and a very bad, bad dude. Let's see. Nicole L on Substack asked, "Do you believe Vance will have the same hold on MAGA as Trump, or will his position as next leader, barf, result in MAGA's demise?" One can only hope, Nicole. I don't know, but I know that Vance will read the scripts written for him where Trump won't. And Trump will go off, in his dementia. And hey, how about that South Park episode, if you haven't seen it yet? That really pissed him off. Look, let's focus on what's within our control to do, and we can do our best to anticipate what's going to be effective. But surely we could, if we know any friends or family members of GOP, that's where we want to reach out and message because they may be around the dinner table or whatever, and could be in a position to remind their father or mother or sister or brother that what they're doing is immoral and harmful. And a lot of these people, I'm remembering a Bill Barr interview, and this was before he got into Trump's bad graces by saying, "Nope, the 2020 election was fair and Trump lost." Oh, Trump didn't like that. But I remember somebody asking Bill Barr, won't he feel, bad about, the fact he said the Russians weren't involved in the Mueller? investigation when they in fact were. And he said, well, the winners write the history. And so he had some self awareness about history. And, I don't think history is going to be kind to Bill Barr, Opus Dei, on their Opus Dei board of directors for Washington, D.C. Opus Dei is intimately involved with Project 2025 of the Heritage Foundation and Leonard Leo's takeover of the Supreme Court. And if you haven't watched my interview with Gareth Gore, the author of the book on Opus Dei, come on my Substack and check it out and listen to the interview and share it. Robert, the fact that Hubbard was a sci fi writer before his cult is a red flag from the start. You're so right. In fact, I wanted to just take a moment and say that people contact me all the time and say, Steve, have you heard of this group or this person? And what do you think of them? And I often have no clue. I don't know who they are, and I might go online to see their website, and I'm always looking at the about and who is the founder. And if they don't say who the founder is and the background and the credentials, then automatically I think it's big red flags there. And it's amazing how many cult leaders have criminal backgrounds, outright criminal backgrounds. It's amazing how many cult leaders have been divorced 4 times or 5 times. Hire a PI and, interview the exes, is what I say to clients who are worried about a loved one. So Robert's a channel member. I want to say thank you for being a channel member. We're releasing my videos for the podcast the week before for those subscribers on YouTube, and I'm planning to do more unique special things on the YouTube. Again, to get enough revenue to pay my people, to have a bigger reach, and to get the message out bigger. I can assure you, I'm not making millions of dollars on subscriptions like some major podcasters. Of course, I don't have that many followers, but I'm not doing this for the money. The money is just to get the message out. And what I really want to do is train more clinicians. And I really want to train more former members who want to be activists to know how to message and share their stories in more effective ways. Because I think that's a big part of my lane going forward. Let's see, Brianna Wilcox Campbell on Instagram. You're a regular. Yay. Hi, Dr. Steve. How do you think historians will paint the time we're living through today? How do I think historians will paint the time? I don't know. And because I hope historians will have a perspective on today like we have on Hitler and Nazi Germany, and understanding, listening to Ruth Ben-Gia, Tim Snyder, other historians who have studied fascism and Mussolini, and understand this is a formula that these people are acting out. So I'm hoping that you know I think I read that Trump is taking out official proceedings that he was impeached. Like there's a museum of impeachment, and he ordered them take out. It's like I'm reminded of Winston's job in 1984, where he'd be deleting people who had been true, high level party members and were defectors, so they were going to get eliminated. And yeah, if you subscribe to my Substack, it's stephenhassan.substack.com, and connect with me. And thanks for putting up all the links to my Instagram. I'm Cult Expert, Blue Sky. And as far as the algorithms go, you need to understand we are being fed a feed that the algorithms think we want to hear more of, and how vital it is that we seek out other perspectives, other people, and other channels. And I like ground news because it has a story and it will give you access to the range of coverage on the story. And I encourage people to read it because, at the very least, you'll know what MAGA is being told about a certain story. And remember, the most powerful thing you can do with a cult member is empower them to think for themselves by asking a good question warmly, with respect and genuine curiosity, and be silent and wait for them to think about an answer. And then when they give an answer, to say, tell me more. Tell me more. That's what's going to work. Trying to persuade somebody with facts and logic just activates their cult identity and their defense systems, and then they think you're the enemy. We don't want that. We want people to think for themselves, and therefore, um, the influence continuum, the bite model are mighty tools. The list of malignant narcissist profiles of Adolf Hitler, that's a tool. You can ask people, look at these. These are the features of Adolf Hitler. Does it remind you of anyone? And you can go through, and that's what chapter 3 of the Cult of Trump is, because I compare him with Jim Jones and Hubbard and Moon, my former cult. So someone's asking me, what cult did I break free from? I was in the Moonies cult. I thought Sun Myung Moon was 10 times greater than Jesus Christ or any religious leader in history. And when I was recruited in 1974 as a college student, Moon was telling us leaders, we're going to infiltrate the government and take it over because God doesn't like democracy. He wants a theocracy, which is what's happening today. And he even said, when we take power in America, we'll amend the Constitution and make it a capital offense for people who break our rules. So, unfortunately, if we're following the Mooney playbook, that's what's coming down the pike, and it ain't pretty. But so, and I needed help. I didn't walk away. I was totally brainwashed, but I nearly died in a van crash. I have chapter 2 of Combating on freedomofmind.com for free if you want to read my story. Yeah, so there was a question that was put up. I'm loving River. I'm loving this new platform that we're streaming from. It's very cool. Lots of thank yous to new Substack subscribers, DJJ Keisher and Pink Glitter and Skulls and Infat2 and I can't read these names. I guess I'm too old or something because this is Gen Z stuff. So my producer's laughing in the background in my ears. It's so funny. I like your laughter. You should stay live. I want people to hear you laughing at how silly, how she said next time maybe she'll, but I love listening to her laugh. Monique Danielle on Substack, do you have thoughts about Shri Chimnoi cult? Shri Chimnoi had his cult in Queens, a few blocks from where I grew up. And for those who haven't read The Cult of Trump, I grew up 1.3 miles from Donald Trump's childhood home. He lived in Jamaica Estates, and I was in a small attached house across Union Turnpike from St. John's University. But I grew up knowing about Donald Trump and what an asshole he was, and what a pervert he was, and how he wouldn't pay his people, and what a racist he was. This was like most New Yorkers know Donald Trump. So anyway, yes, Sri Chimnoi, mind control cult, many former members, and I have a whole database on Sri Chimnoi. And I don't know if I've interviewed a former member of Sri Chimnoi. I think we're going to have to double check into that, but I certainly know a whole bunch of them. So my assistant reminds me that the cult he was in, Zen Master Rama, got out of Sri Chimnoi. It's Chinmoy. And he started his own cult, the one that my assistant Jim got into and got out of. And a Dateline was done featuring his former cult leader. Um, and the cult leader, when he was exposed on Dateline, he later killed himself. You know, Hitler killed himself when things were going bad. We can only hope, right? Anyway, um, let's see. SHB Callie on Instagram asks, Yarvin's dark enlightenment is frightening and nothing a common person would want. So that's part of the Freedom City and this network state crap. Have you noticed any early cult signs of cult tools being used to promote it? Yeah, everywhere. Look at X. Musk is totally into Yarvin's nonsense. Yarvin is anti-democracy, by the way, and thinks that we should have a CEO running America, or like a king who has executive autocratic privileges. So yeah, I'm not for this. I'm for like human rights and rule of law and separation of powers and public education and not this handmaid's tale stuff where women should just have babies and people think that science is evil. Science is what has helped human species evolve and grow and learn. And now we're making tools that are going to take us over if people like Jeffrey Hinton, who won a Nobel Prize for AI, is correct. He's predicting that, all of the banks are going to get hacked through these supercomputers. And it's like, why are we doing this? Who is in charge? And it just seems like there's a weapons race for AI, um, without thought of the mess it's going to create. And let's be adults, people. Let's think ahead. Let's think of our children and our grandchildren. Please, I beg of you. And yes, please check out my books. I see in the chat there's a link to Combating Freedom of Mind, Cult of Trump, Understanding Cults. The orange book, Releasing the Bonds, is out of print at the moment because I kind of took the kernels out of that into Freedom of Mind. But I will put it back in print one day. But I'm most excited because we're going to have a Spanish edition of Combating. When Combating initially came out in '88, it was published in Spanish, French, German, Japanese, Czech, Polish, German, Russian, and a whole bunch of other languages. But, that edition is so out of date with the Combating with two T's. So if you see that people are ordering the one with two T's, it's like the world has changed so dramatically since I initially wrote that book. Um, let's see. Sally on Instagram asks, could you talk more about how Trump was in a cult? What are the characteristics of Trump's cult? Thank you for your question. Yeah, so he grew up in the cult of Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the book The Power of Positive Thinking. And this was the ideology of salespeople who would say, fake it till you make it, and believe 100%. And if you don't believe 100%, that doubt is sin. So you have to believe. And so Trump was taught what's called thought stopping, which is blocking doubts. I was taught in the Moonies to do thought stopping, but I was framed as demons trying to possess me, a la Exorcist movie. But it's really important to understand all of these prosperity ministers, like Paula White, Kane White, yeah, who's the faith minister in the White House. She's a prosperity minister. It's like, believe, give me money. I need to buy more cars and more mansions, and it's okay, put it on your credit card. And if you're pure of heart, the money will be returned to you. And it's great for pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing cults. But these are not Christians. The media has mischaracterized them as Christians. Jesus was like for the poor and the homeless and the immigrant and help the sick and love. And as you do to the least, you do to me. And think about that. How would Jesus feel about how people are being rounded up by masked, not even professional law enforcement people, and put into concentration camps or threatened to be sent to El Salvador or some prison? This is just plain fascist terrorism to scare people. And it's largely working. Why? Because as human beings, we have an overemphasis on protecting ourselves from danger. It's part of our evolution is to avoid poisonous food or dangerous animals or whatever. And we need our frontal cortex to analyze, is it real or is it a phobia? Is it an irrational fear that was put in hypnotically in through YouTube at 2 in the morning because I was sleep deprived? It's like we need to analyze what are our beliefs, where did they come from, who put them there. And Dave Troy, who does TEDx Mid Atlantic, asked me and Jim Stewartson and Desiree Kane to do a dismantling QAnon TEDx during COVID, which we did. And Jim helped to create alternate reality gaming, like Pokemon Go, where it was like a fusion between the digital world and the experiential world. ARG. Thank you. Alternate reality gaming. My helper Cami is telling me in my ear, which is great. Anyway, it got taken off of YouTube as for hate speech by a Russian cult called Allatra, Allatra. It's a Russian cult. They also go by a front group named I think it's Creative Society. Anyway, people need to understand QAnon was a psyop. And I interviewed Greg Hausch, one of the originators of Anonymous. I got to meet Greg during a 10-year anniversary of the fight against Scientology by Anonymous, where people were turning out against Scientology orgs around the world wearing Guy Fawkes masks, which was a brilliant idea. And I said, hey, Greg, what about QAnon? I asked him way back in 2017 or 18. QAnon started in 2017. I said, what about it? He said, oh, I know those guys. It was a total goof on the Trumpers. I'm like, yeah. He said, yeah, but then they realized they could make money selling merch. And then the Russians got involved. And I'm sharing this now because the latest effort from the White House is to put the attention on Russia hoax, that there was no links between the Soviet Union and Trump, or the Putin and Trump. And if you look at chapter 7 of The Cult of Trump, that's the chapter for puppet masters, I put Putin at the top of the chapter. There's more than ample evidence, and I've since learned so much more about Russian involvement, direct involvement, including Susan Wiles, his chief of staff, was a paid lobbyist for Putin and Xi prior to her helping him get elected, I believe through the hack of Facebook through Cambridge Analytica and secret sauce AI computers back in 2015. Susan Wiles worked for Russia and China, and she's now chief of staff for the Trump administration. Duh. Think there's a Russian connection? You know? So open your eyes. Read Craig Unger's books. Malcolm Nance. There's so many people and Michael Wolff. Let's see, how we doing? I'm loving this new streaming platform, and hopefully we'll be reaching a lot of new people who will learn that I have as a former cult member, become a mental health professional and been helping people for 49 years full time, and wrote the Simon and Schuster book, The Cult of Trump. Sorry, Time Lord Mandalorian is a regular, and yes, it's a Star Wars thing. Cammy, you have to get unmuted. I think people need to hear you. Let's see, Dr. Hassan. I just want to say thanks. I read most of the books you've recommended on the podcast, like Robert J.'s Lifton book on brainwashing. So listen, you can't see it, but I have a whole shelf of Dr. Lifton's book. I've read all of them. He wrote Losing the Reality. He wrote a book on apocalyptic cults called Destroying the World to Change It. And the book featured the Japanese sarin gas cult of Shoko Asahara and applying his 8 criteria of mind control that was used in my deprogramming in 1976 that helped me start thinking again. Oh, wait a minute, we're God, but Chinese communists are Satan, but we're doing the same 8 criteria of brainwashing. How is that possible that we're God and they're Satan and we're doing the same criteria as brainwashing? It took a while, but I got out, and here I am, 2 masters and a PhD later, and feeling very fulfilled that I can share my knowledge. I've been reading books and studying and researching, and I want to change the law. I want to update the law to give a concrete way using anti-trafficking existing laws, a concrete way for people to say this was undue influence, that you didn't have informed consent, and not allow ministerial exemptions. Well, it's a religion, so you can lie when you're recruiting. It's like, huh? What legitimate religion lies when they're recruiting? Cults lie. That's their modus operandi. Legitimate religions respect people's individuality and want people to choose. So think about it. But they're multi-billion dollar corporations, a lot of these big cults. They don't want regulation. They want a license to steal and cheat. And now they have, with Trump's aid, permission to politic overtly. It used to be illegal for people to politic from the pulpit. That was when there were checks and balances to rein in religion and keep it separate, church and state. So I'm being informed to remind people to please join Substack. For $5 a month, you get access to my archives of hundreds of articles and interviews. And trust me, if you are interested in this subject, you will want to join Substack and get access to this. And I have so much material that is now getting scanned from boxes and boxes that I've accrued over the decades. And we're going to be offering them exclusively to Substack and YouTube subscribers. Yes, thank you, Cami. StephenHassan.substack.com. I don't know why we didn't make it Dr. Stephen Hassan, so it's the same as the YouTube channel, Dr. Stephen Hassan. But what and Cami says they should be cult expert, and I always thought it should be cult expert. But some people are saying cults are a bad word, and it triggers people. And again, I say cults exist along the entire continuum. There are ethical cults and there are authoritarian cults. Like I'm in the scuba diving cult. I did 4 TEDx's. I say I'm in the TEDx cult. I love giving them and I love listening and learning from people. So get past the word cult and think description. Authoritarian mind control cults is what we're against. We want people to think for themselves. In fact, we say it's your mind and only you should control it. And if you're a good writer, and I mean a good writer, not just using AI, but an actual good writer and want to volunteer and help us getting material out there, please contact us at center@freedomofmind.com, because I've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 interviews, and we need to get them written up in blogs. I do oversee and edit the final thing before we give it to the guest, but to get a rough draft is going to speed things up dramatically. Help us, please. And if you are part of a philanthropic foundation, we are not a 501c3, but you can maybe give a grant or invite Freedom of Mind to be a project of your nonprofit. Because if we had more money, I would do more courses and train more people in mass, because that's what we're going to need, is a lot of educated citizens who aren't just fighting fire with fire, but understanding how minds got hacked and empowering people to move forward. And yes, thank you for putting that up. Center@freedomofmind.com. And if you want to be a volunteer, please put in the subject line, "I want to volunteer," and send your CV and your experience. If you're an experienced writer, send a sample or two. That will speed things up for Jim and my team. We have another question. Let's see. Kathy Gardner on Substack asks, "Is the Church of Christ scientist a cult?" That's Mary Baker Eddy. And yes, it is a mind control cult. Remember, I think the word cult is you need qualifiers. I've been asked, is Taylor Swift a cult leader? And I'm like, the Swifties? Yeah, they're a fandom, you know? They love her, they know the words to her songs, but she's not mind controlling anyone or exploiting people or making them dependent or telling them what they can read or can't read. And nobody's threatening people if they decide they don't want to go to concerts or listen to her music anymore. It's like people grow and change. Have a good time, right? But look into that. There's so many people have died thinking that disease is imaginary, and if they just pray over you, the disease will go away. Like there's no such thing as cancer. There is such a thing as cancer. And that's why a lot of people, especially children, were dying, and then lawsuits got them to change their policies. So it's the worst groups in the world are terrorists, violent terrorist cults, and pimps and traffickers, in my opinion. But we have to I have to say, she runs the biggest cult on planet Earth. It's called China, the Chinese Communist Party. 1.5 billion people. And they think that they should decide what everyone thinks and feels and acts. And they use AI and surveillance and DNA information. By the way, if you have 23andMe, delete your information if you did your DNA testing through them. I heard that it went bankrupt. That's why I didn't do DNA testing. I don't want people to know my DNA. If a doctor needs to know what my DNA is, it could, for a health reason, maybe, but I don't want it in a database that could be hacked or bought out by a totalist, cult organization. So I want to thank my volunteers. Everyone's been working so hard, and life's not easy. And I want people to breathe. I want you to go into a forest, go swimming, dance to music, listen to live poetry. Be with humans and be with puppies and cats and babies, whatever makes you feel really warm and good. And don't just spend all your time on the frickin' phone. Phones are tools. They shouldn't control us. We should control them. And holy mackerel, the hour has just flown by. I want to thank everybody, and especially my team on this new streaming platform. Very exciting. And And please join my Substack, my YouTube, subscribe for my free newsletter. It comes out Tuesday nights. And thank you and take care. See you next week.